a supporting video if we need it for tomorrow. So what we're going to do is create a rock song. So I'm going to start by adding in 3 instrument tracks for now, and we'll not name them like we don't do because we don't know what they're going to be, and they don't all be the same title. So once we've got it all up and running, what we can do is just double click on the name of the channel there and change them afterwards. If you named them when you add the track, it will name them the same thing. So what we're going to do now is put the instruments in. So on the insert tab, obviously when I've got the plug-in instrument, and down to the expand to. And for drums, if we have a look in the factory default, we should find drum kit somewhere, drums 26 there. And we're going to look for a rock kit if possible. A standard kit would be alright, but see if there's anything with a rock in the title. Rock kit there, number 7. And for the bass, we'll just use an electric picked bass. Picked bass there, possibly. Obviously you can change the instrument sounds later on, just to give us a good starting point. And for the guitar part, we're going to try and make it a distorted guitar part if we can find one. So guitars, distorted guitar anywhere. Dirty lead, maybe use that for a solo a bit later on. What else have we got? Distorted lead, distorted guitar there, 38, which see what that sounds like. Okay, so there's sort of key elements obviously within the composition element that we've been looking at, and it might be a case of deciding which key we're going to use so far. So I'm going to maybe start off using C minor, which is also E flat major. So if I put my notes out, I have a clue what I can pick from. Now, in guitar parts, what you probably find is you want to be using power chords. So instead of using simple major minor triads like we have done in the past, you'll want to be using this type of chord. Sorry. You want to use this type of chord where we're using root, fifth, and octave on top. Okay. But again, once you've put one in, we could copy and paste it and move it up and down to suit as we need. But I'll just finish this off since I've started. G, D, G, and I'm just literally picking the root note, the 5 notes higher, and then the root note again on top. And finally back to C. Okay, so these are all power chords. So referred to as C5, D5, and so on. E flat 5. Made a mistake there as well, so should have been an A flat in that. So it's not necessarily the 5th flat, to be fair. B flat and 5th, but we'll discuss it as we go through. Right, okay then. So what we're going to use is a fundamental guitar part first off, and then we'll build it up with some drums and stuff later on. So to give us like a bit of a metronome to start us off, what we could potentially do is open MIDI editor on the drum kit. And remember, if you scroll down to like the C1 region, there's your kick drum. So to expand it vertically, just so you can see the keyboard a little bit more, I'm using Command Shift and the right hand bracket key. But if you guys are on a Windows machine, you'll be using Control Shift and a right hand bracket key. And we'll just put in hats on every beat just as crotchets. So you'll see if we expand the grid a little bit more, you've got bar 1, bar 2, bar 3 and bar 4, and if I just put them across like this, obviously I know we can copy and paste them as well. That would have made your life a little bit quicker, baby. And you could potentially put, I'll tell you what we could do to make it a little bit rockier and build it up, is we could look at putting in 8th notes on the kick drum. So it does suggest that the grid should have been using 16th notes right now, but if I change it to 8th notes just to trigger it, it's there now, giving me 8 quaver beats in a bar. And hopefully if I do that kick drum pad like this, so we've got the kick drum hopefully going 1 and 2, 3, 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and with the hi-hats just going 1, 2, 3, 4. So a slow build up basically. Enter key gets you back to the beginning of the track, and then spacebar starts it. Okay, so a slow start for our rock song, and if we wanted to as well, we could also duplicate that. So Command and D or Control and D for you to be able to duplicate that part there. And then what you could look at doing is having 8 bars and potentially the same chord if you want to, but you could also change it if you wanted to. So I'll demonstrate both methods. So if I right click in this section here and open MIDI editor, you can see that I've selected in the guitar part, and hopefully let's listen to it. If I get my draw tool, sorry, and click on here. Sometimes it is finicky. Not happy. Draw a note in there instead. Right, okay, so yeah, it doesn't sound too bad. It's not drawing notes in like that. Draw tool. Open MIDI editor again, try that one. Doesn't like that, does it? Why is that the case? Freehand. Right, okay, let me try drawing a note in here first then. Okay, so it's drawing that note in from that position. Hopefully now I can edit it. So I'm going to do this over 1 bar, just long held chord, and we talked about using power chords. So obviously that's a wrong interval, so I use the up arrow just to get it right. And again, if you can't see the keyboard too clearly, if you use Control Shift in the right hand bracket key, you'll be able to expand it a little bit. So that's over 1 bar, but if we just listen to that by itself, it works, it's alright, but personally I would want it to be a little bit lower sounding, so I'm going to bring it down to this lower octave. So let's try this. It's a bit better, isn't it? For rock. And to be fair, we could look at maybe making it the same chord over 2 bars. So you select all your notes there, and maybe just drag that out. Might have to use the resize tool, drag that out for that. Okay, yeah, so like that, I'm going to extend that, so I'm going to use it for 2 bars rather than the 1 bar. Again, you guys can use your own judgment and see what you want to do. So we've got 8 bars of this, so what I might do is just leave it for the first 4 bars using 2 long held chords, and then I might build it up a little bit ready to get into our next section. So let's have a listen to this. And then obviously the drum part's going to do exactly the same thing, but we could start to develop the idea of maybe putting in a few more hits on the guitar, put a different rhythm in. So I can expand that fuller. There you go. So you've got the same power chords, the C, G and C on top, and I might just do it as crotchets for now, see what that does, and then put a different rhythm in if it doesn't work. I want it to. Okay, and let's just select them notes. Okay, then. Okay, so from the beginning we've got this. then to be fair, for bar 9, that could be the starting point of where we put some more exciting in. Now for the bass part then, we can look at doing the same similar thing and trying to put in a supporting root note like Mike getting a pop song. So I'm just going to go down to C2 region for now and try drawing in a note just so it lets me open it in the MIDI editor properly. It's gone back into C3 region there, so it's too high, but let's have a look. So if I bring that down, okay, yeah, that works. I might just try an octave lower out of curiosity as well. It might be a little bit too dull at that point now. Just bring this note back in if it lets me. There we go, and we'll do the same principle with the bass part. It can do. Yeah, it's a bit too loud. Maybe if it was a metal thing, more appropriate. But let me select that note first. Sorry. So I'll duplicate that and then I'll bring it in. For the bass part, I might make it a little bit more interesting. So basically I've got an ascending bass note underneath the single guitar chord. Whether you like it or not, it's option. You can do it the other way around as well. So I could have that long, I could have the bass note doing the same interval and have a look at moving the chord progression up. So let's just try that out of curiosity, see what that does. So again, don't forget you can go into, instead of notes view, we can go to clips view and just see it a little bit easier on these two parts here. If I've got the clips out, just bring this guitar part in, and if I select this chord here and just move it up to D, this chord here and move it up to E flat, move this note up to F, just to see what it sounds like. Okay, so I did suggest this earlier on, but this note here, or this chord here, is actually out of key slightly because it should have been a flat and fifth in there, it should have been an A flat in there. So notice, because it's obviously the 7th degree of the E flat major scale, it's going to be diminished, it's going to have a flat and fifth. Listen to this here, it's going to sound a little bit too dark with it having a flat and fifth in, so let's try it. Perfect if you want that, but you might find slightly moving out of key just to use that chord as an ascending pattern. Moving up will work quite effectively. So far we've got drums, bass and guitar part for our rock song, and obviously we've got some long held chords, some simple bass parts and some simple drum patterns underneath to get us into it. So from our next section then, into bar 9 if you like, what we're going to look at doing is building it up into a more formal rock drum pattern. So if I don't resize that in the first place, if I select that and maybe use it to help me, same with the bass part, I'm just going to check if that resizing slightly out if I zoom in, and then shuffle across here. Again, there's probably quicker ways on Pro Tools, sorry for this, and you might be aware of them. But if I bring that in there you go. It just means we've got the option to keep it right for 4-bar loops if we're going to do it. Anyway, so let's look at this drum pattern. Let's adapt the drum pattern. So it's been very simple so far, and it's just been 8th notes. Now, obviously, to make it sound like to the listener that there's something interesting happening or something different, we could potentially move that up to the crash cymbal to make it obviously identify that there's going to be a start of a section or something new. We could also look at putting in more kick drum patterns. So if I maybe expand this screen after I put that note in a bit, I'll probably want to have 8th notes again to get like a driving kick drum feel. And if I move that back to there, kick drum pattern I'm going to go for, it's going to be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and, so I'm going to keep that sort of starting pulse, if you like, what we've already used in the intro, and I'm going to try and just add in the extra ba-da-da, ba-da-da sort of feel to the kick drum to give it a drive. And I'm going to put the snare drum on 2 and on 4 for now. And obviously we'll look at putting some fills in as we get through if I move that up. Obviously we could have just put the one kick drum pattern and copy and pasted it across. That was a quicker way of doing things, but because I'm halfway here now, might as well start and finish it off. And we could put that forehand in as well. So obviously you can pause the video and just check the pattern. I'll zoom in and make it easy for you to see one bar of in a second. But just to get us started and just to confirm it sounds good and it works, here we go. Okay, so it's got a real drive and pulse to it on the kick drum side of things. And if I zoom out a little bit just to get one bar maybe, and to select Len notes there, and then try and zoom in vertically and horizontally just so you can see the pattern on the keyboard. So you've got the C1 for the kick drum pattern on the bottom notes there, you've got the D1 for the 2 snare drum patterns there, and to be fair I have left it as crotchets on the hi-hats for now as well, but we could look at doing 8th notes potentially as well, so if you move them down. And let's look at drawing in extra hat patterns here so you can listen to like sort of the difference right now. Here we go. So that's like the standard pop hi-hat pattern that we've been using or we looked at last week, but listen to the next bar to say what it used to sound like. So it sort of has like a half-time feel to it, if you like, with the hi-hats. Not quite half-time feel, but you know what I'm saying. It's a bit more relaxed. So to be honest, I'm going to leave it like that for now because it's the verse section. I'm just going to keep it slow with the kick drum pattern building up. It gives it something different for the listener. So at that point there, then we'll maybe have to look at doing something with the guitar part. So if we select the guitar part here and duplicate that, we can then go into it and hopefully make it a little bit more varied in what the pattern is doing. So what I'm going to do is let's have a look at this bar 9. Simplify it a little bit. Oops, sorry, select all there and select these notes. Okay, so I'm going to use that kick drum pattern for the guitar part to support it a little bit more, to make it a little bit more exciting. Hopefully we can look at making a bit more of a varied rhythm. So this is just going to be crotchets, so what I might also do there is go to quavers to get that kick drum pattern to happen. So change the grids to 8th note set and select them 2 bars, just shorten them down if it lets me, resize it again. Okay. So the guitar part, if we wanted to keep it very, very basic and simple, could literally copy the same thing just using the C chord that we've got for our first bar anyway, and obviously it's C5 power chord. So listen to this one bar. Okay, so that works, it's nice, and it sort of gives you something on the guitar part. But what's also very common at times is maybe to go a tone lower on that. So listen to this now. Okay, so literally moving from the root note down to the -7 interval and back up again, it could give it a little bit more interest. The other factor is you could, if you were going to loop the C and stay on C again, you could go down like this. And obviously then we'd want to duplicate them notes as well, so you can hear the loop. And then if you were going to do the same chord progression again, if it was going to be exactly the same pattern, you could do that. But obviously at some point you'd want to change the chord. So let's have a listen to it as it for 4 bars. And I'm going to change this last bar here to G, I think. Let's try F. Okay, so let's try this. And then obviously that would loop for 4 bars if you wanted it to. It's not like a pop song, you don't have to move it from C to A minor to F to G like most of them do. You don't have to go from C F, G, A minor. You don't have to give it 4 chords in the progression. No problem with staying on the same chord. And I might even, I can hear a song in my head that this might be ripping off, by the way, but I don't. It's not purposeful to rip it off. Let's see what it sounds like. And then obviously you get back to the next section there. Let's bring this in a little bit. Let's get rid of them last 4 bars there, and let's duplicate these ones. Right, okay, so there's a new 8-bar section. Okay, so we can then duplicate the bass part, and obviously thinking about the chord progression that we've just done and the rhythm patterns that we've had, let's go in at the bar where we are, bar 9. Oh, sorry, delete the main part that I wanted. So I'm looking at this section here, really, and just zoom in a bit vertical. Okay, so from bar 9, I think that's where we're looking to be. Keep the same sort of idea, but we want to maybe look at incorporating a little bit of variation in the pattern, and we could use the minor pentatonic scale for that. So we've looked at all the chord types that we could use. If I was going to use C minor pentatonic, I'd have the first note, which is 1, then I'd have a flattened third, which is E flat, then I'd have the 4th, which is F, then G, which is a 5th, then B flat, which is a flattened 7, and then back to the octave on top there. So this is going to be the minor pentatonic. So I'm going to use that sort of theory when I create my bass line, and I'm going to try and keep the same rhythmical ideas. So let me just make sure the grid's showing 8 notes again and zoom in a little bit more. Okay. Right, so let's have a look at doing this, and I'll just try drawing these in. And then, without getting too excited and putting loads of notes in, we could try doing some descending patterns on 16th notes, using the minor pentatonic scale with that scale toning as well if we wanted to. So let's have a quick listen to that and see if we haven't got too far with it. Just bar 9. So just jump back a little bit. So bar 9. Yeah, okay. So maybe too much too soon, but let's use that as an idea later on, so it does work. Alright, so did it, and then so now it's the bass part. I've got doing the minor interval again, like the guitar part I was doing, but I think the guitar part was doing it there actually, to be fair, so let's try doing it there as well. So it doesn't matter if it's the end of the bar, but if it's in the middle of the bar, let's try doing that. Where are we up to? So bar 9, 10, so we want, so we stayed on C for 3 bars, and then we went down to F, so a perfect time to drop down now to the F, which is down here. And then you could go lower, but it might too low for me, so I'm going to try staying, actually we'll do F, and then we'll go to A flat, so it's a minor third interval back to F. And then we had G for 2 beats, so we could use the G as a progression, go back to C. So let's listen to that section there. Okay, and yeah, if this view mode. Cube open, right, okay, so let's have a look at this. So on the guitar part, actually, have I gone? No, on them notes. Yeah. Just checking the rhythm pattern quickly. So we're doing that. It doesn't always drop. That's right. Okay, so I've got the bass part dropping more than what I've got the guitar part. I've got the guitar part doing that minor interval just on the end of the bar. I thought I did it on the middle of the bar at times as well. It's not a problem though. We can leave it in on the bass, or we can alleviate it at times so it's not too full on, you know. So let's have a quick scan. This is the bass part. Go back from the beginning. So that does work. It's not going to clash, but doing that same interval and having that variation could work, and it doesn't have to happen all the time, like we say, but it's there if we need it. Yeah, okay. So we did talk about having a rundown on 16th notes. Possibly you could do it in between this section. So you could look at putting in basically the scale notes going into the next section if you want to. So if we use the trim tool just to shorten that note there. So that's going down the minor 7 into scale notes if we want to, or the minor pentatonic. The only problem there is if we do the F, we hit it too soon. So what you could also look at doing is maybe bringing that C, B flat, A flat, G down into the F there. So it's just something like that. So there you go, you've got that as an option if you need it to. Right, so let's have a look at putting clips on that, and then bringing that section in, and then we're going to duplicate the bass part as well. Right, so there we go, and if we then Control D that, Command D that, you'll notice that that's now there. So we've got overall the starting point of an intro. I'll just zoom back out again so you can see right what we've got to so far. And I can select these sections here like we did last week. And again, this is stuff that you might want to discuss on your blogs when you're doing your production side of things. And you can change that one colour, and then you can do these another colour, and then at least you know what sort of sections you're dealing with. So from the beginning of the track so far, without me looping that. Okay, so it's coming on nicely. We've got the key elements in. We've got the right instrumentation in there. We've got some rock rhythms in there. We've got some long held notes in there. We've got some minor pentatonic notes in there. We've got some runs in the bass parts. So what we can look at doing now is making the chorus section, if you like. Now, because we've sort of had a very repetitive guitar part and very simple chord progression, we could look at putting in either there's a riff option that we could look at doing, or we could also just try and develop the drum pattern into, like, say, 16th notes, which might make it a little bit more technical sounding, and obviously putting in a bit of a busy guitar part in there. We'll see. Right, so let's start on the drums in. Controls with that. And yeah, so we've had a simple hi-hat pattern in there. So let's develop that first off. Again, the crash cymbal is not going to be a problem, but if we are going to put a more advanced part in there, potentially want to shorten all them notes, and then obviously we can look at putting 16th notes in, so that'll make it busier. And then we could also look at the kick drum a little bit more. So we've got it going 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and we can also put like a kick in if we move that kick there. So we've got like a bit of a skip, sorry, in the snare pattern. So here we go. And we could also look at copy and pasting that as well. So let me just minimize these selections of notes and select these. So you could put the crash in every time if you wanted to on the start of each bar. You could also make it crash heavy. You could put crashes on every crotchet if you wanted to. But it might just be a bit too much. I'll demonstrate in a second, and you can obviously make your opinion whether you want to do that. So without copying and pasting the crash in this time, I'm just going to draw that extra note in there. And then obviously with that selected, we could then duplicate that one section there. So let's go to play that drum pattern by itself. If we solo that. Okay, and then like we said, we could put the crashes in on every beat if we wanted to. So it might just be a bit too much, but we'll try it anyway, see what happens. So we'll just select that note there. I'll just do this one bar, and then you can make your opinion based on the one bar. So you can hear it's quite effective, and it works quite well. Whether you want it to happen on your piece, completely up to you. But for now, I'm just going to bring it down so it's not too bad. And there's nothing wrong with also looking to vary the sort of beat 4 snare drum as well at times, so it doesn't necessarily have to always have that skip idea to it. So you can actually offset the snare beats to do that. And I can also put like the kick drum maybe to try this, so see what that sounds like. Okay, so we can duplicate the same thing and just keep it bland and the same all the way through, or you can put little variations in at times as well, like a drummer would do. So your discretion how you want to do it, but if you wanted to screenshot that, or if you wanted to zoom in at that point there, you'd be able to see the entire drum pattern that I've got for that one section. Okay, so that's the main snare, kick snare and hats with a crash on. If you wanted to put in extra hits like we were showing you to do, that's fine. Okay, so we've got a bit of variation in that second bar, and obviously it doesn't have to happen every bar, but just whenever you feel you want to. Now, again, what would be common on a sort of rock pattern would to be putting some fills in as well. So we could do something simple. Instead of having the hats playing, so you've got to think about a drummer physically doing this. We usually start on a snare, then let's see if we can find a high tom. There's a high tom from the sounds of it, or a mid tom, yeah, let's see. So maybe that's the high. Mid. Floor. There we go. So in your basic idea, it'd just be 2 hits on the snare, 2 hits on the high, then the mid, then the floor tom. Let's listen to that bar. Okay, and then obviously you've got to think maybe it is possible to do this and hit the snare, but you might take that second snare hit out, so it's more realistic. Okay, so on the end of each 4-bar section in your drum section for your verses or whatever, you could obviously look at developing some sort of fills. I'll look at doing a couple of screen recordings for some drum fills, or print screens from MIDI parts maybe, and that'll show you how to do that. Right, okay, so we've got a busier drum pattern now. Let's maybe go to the guitar part next. So let's have a look. Instead of it just doing the same thing and staying on the C and then going to the F, we could completely start again. So take out all of that section there potentially. Sorry, just maybe take the data out and leave the MIDI region in there. So bar 17, we might take out that event. Is that what's the case? Anyway, I've got 4 bars, I think. Yeah, 2 at least. Right, okay. So we've been on a C going to an F. Let's look at developing it. Let's give it a new chord now. And I'm going to think, what can I do? Go to G maybe. Try G. Drawing it in. Let's do. G's a passing chord from the last chord. Sorry. So let's not go to G, because otherwise it'll sound like the same, unless you were going to change them last 2 beats previously. So let's go down to F. No, sorry. I've already used F, I think. Well, I'll tell you what we could do. We could try going to the root note of the scale. Can be a little bit happier, hopefully. So I'm just generating a rhythm in my head, thinking about how effective it would be. Yeah, okay. I'm happy with that rhythm, and then I'm going to use that same pattern, but I'm going to move it up the scale now. So I'm going to go to now I'm going to go to G because I've already just moved away from it. Let me delete these last couple of sections here, and then let me select these. So we've got our E flat going to G. If I want it to be like a progressive thing ascending, I could go to A flat and to B flat. So let's try and see what that sounds like. So here we go. Okay, so a bit cheesy possibly, but you know, you'll be looking to do more creative aspects than what I'm doing. I'm just doing it to demonstrate the technicality of it and the sort of rhythms and the patterns that you might expect to hear. With that in mind, then obviously the bass part's going to follow doing the same sort of principle. So we can obviously take out the remaining bass notes, and we could look at the rhythmic pattern that we've done on a guitar, so that you will find that it's worthwhile trying to keep the same rhythms. Not saying it has to happen all the time, but having the same sort of progressive patterns might be useful. And I'm going to try, obviously I'm doing this on the wrong note right now, I'm aware of that, but let's just have a look and see what this does first off, if it supports it. If we go down to the E flat first, and then if I go to duplicate them notes and go up to the F, sorry, went to G, didn't we, after that? Sorry, G, then A flat, and then B flat. Okay, so here we go. Let's see what this does. Let's take the solos off. I'll put the solos on whichever way around. Okay, so it works, it's okay, but then obviously you can start to say, right, well, the bass part doesn't really do anything exciting and it's just the same thing. So then you can start looking at using chord tones to try and add some extra notes in and make it a little bit more exciting. So I'm going to try not to put in really random notes, but I'm going to try and use the chord tones first. So you'll notice that the root note, the third, the root note, the fifth, and the root notes in the first bar, and I've done the same in the second bar, so here we go. And again, if we just kept doing it all the way through, it might be a bit too more of a technical exercise. So you might then start to look at going descending wise instead of it being always ascending, and it'll just end up going up the same scale. So from the A flat there, we might drop down to the E flat low fifth, and then we might go to a minor 7 interval on there. So actually not a minor 7 on there because it will be out of key. Just thinking of using a chord tone maybe instead, scale tone instead. Okay, so that works. From B down to the F, and then the A flat would work for a minor 7 interval that time. So let's try this. Okay, so it's not the best bass line in the world, but again, you get the picture. It's looking at using the same sort of fundamental rhythms as you're going through. The other option is you could completely go into a different rhythm on the bass part. I'll demonstrate that because that might make it a little bit more exciting and realistic. So best bass line in the first place. You can see anyway, and you could stop the video if you did like that. You could manipulate that to your own ideas. So what I'm going to do here is just literally play the root note all the way through as a basic idea to start us off with. So using just literally 8th notes all the way through to start this one off. So it would have a completely different rhythm pattern to what the guitar part's doing, and it wouldn't have space like the guitar part did. But that can work as well, it can be effective, so let's have a listen to this. Okay, so yeah, it's not the most exciting again, but it works, and it's sort of like it's giving you like a counterpoint to the other rhythm. It's giving you something different, which isn't obviously technically difficult, as you can see. It's just ascending in 8th notes, but it works harmonically and it sounds okay. And yeah, you could go in and say, right, well actually I'll tell you what, I'll put the 3rd in there and I'll put the 5th in there and I'll see what it sounds like, and it might work. And it might end up being a bit of a technical exercise by literally just moving up and down the scale, putting in the 3rds and the 5ths if you wanted to. And there's nothing wrong with you doing the drop like we did last time by putting it down a 5th and down into a scale tone if you like. And we went down into F, I think, on that one there, and also, sorry, F not E, and then also we'll use the minor 7. So here we go. That was using the same intervals that we did last time, but now with an 8th note bass line. Okay, and obviously then you would loop that round again, and that potentially would be your next section of your song if you like. So let's zoom out a little bit on here if we can. Actually, I have to bring that window down now. There's your sections for your new parts. Obviously we can click on them and change them, and they could potentially have a new colour if we do clips and tracks instead. So there we go. And then at that point there, you could decide that you're going to duplicate them and then get a 8-bar section instead. So you've got your intro, you've got your verse section, you've got your chorus section, and they're obviously changing, and they've got different rhythmic patterns, and you've also got like a snare fill at maybe the end of a section to build it into that part. You can also do a middle 8 section after that, and the middle 8 section might be a case of dropping things right back, so it just literally go back into like an intro type guitar part really, where there's just long held chords. You could do like a slower drum pattern, so you've got less notes in there, and it's you know, not too busy. Let me just demonstrate it very quickly if I can. So let me select these notes, get rid of them. Right, and in the middle 8 section, it might be darker as well. So at that point there, we could look at using not like the major intervals of the scale that we're in. So I'm going to go into the F minor there. I'll tell you what I'll do actually, I'll try this rhythm instead. So I'll have a bit of a push on it. And then if we duplicate that, and then back in. And then, oops, sorry. Select that bar. Try this. Oops, sorry. Solo that a second. Solo there. There we go. Okay, well, let's say that it's okay for now. Let's take out some of these drum patterns. and I'm just going to put in literally say hats. So I had to go back on the quarter notes, just on the crotches on each bit of the bar. Obviously, copy and pasting would have been quicker. And I'm going to take out the main fundamental snare beat on beat 2 as well. So if I go to select this now and take out that, and maybe all of these kick drum patterns. So it's hopefully going to be a lot simplified. Just main emphasis is going to be to bring some dynamics in. Right, so let's see what that sounds like. Okay, so it works, and it just calms things down a little bit. That guitar part could probably be longer held if you wanted to as well. It doesn't necessarily have to go to a C minor as well, so let's look at taking the C minor out for this point here as well. And let me try just blending this out. Again, it's your discretion. You can pause the video, you can use whatever you want really, if you feel like it was necessary to have that. So let me just see what that sounds like from bar 1. Yeah, so maybe I prefer that actually. So I'm just going to take out that. So it all sorts depends what sort of style of rock you're going to go for. There we go. So listen to this then. So then obviously in the bass part, if we just now got that one guitar chords, which is going to be the F minor I believe, you could literally just do the same idea on bass, supporting it with longer held chords. I'm pushing it on the 2 and, so it's going 1 and 2 and, that's when the next beat lands. So if you were going to extend this note to sort of match the rhythm, you could do something like this. And then if you want to make it a little bit more interesting, obviously you could start to, sorry I'm on the wrong note there as well, and it's still from the previous chord. So if we move this back up to the F there, sorry, you could include some of the scale tones to make it a little bit more exciting as a thing, but again it might just end up being an exercise if you're just going up the scale all the time. So let's have a listen to that if we include the solo on that one now as well. Here we go. Okay, and yeah, it works. It's not the best, but just trial and error these things, don't you? So I think it's ending on the D's a bit too happy. Oop, don't want to do it all. Just want that one note. Click off it. That one. Okay, see what that sounds like. Yeah, okay. So that might work effectively for what I want, just for this quick speed thing. So I'll use that instead. Anyway, so you get the idea, and that would obviously then end up being a new section, so we could select them 3 parts there, go to your colours, and clips and tracks there, and below same. Okay, so you've got your intro, your verse, your chorus, and potentially your mid-late, which I know is only 4 bars right now, but nothing wrong with doing that and developing it. And you could obviously have the first 4 bars doing the F minor, then it could change chord, or you could go from like the first 2 bars down into a different chord and come back to the F minor again, depending on what the structure is going to be. So all in all, your general ideas, your rock rhythms and your chord progressions and your patterns are all there. Now the only thing that you might want to start considering extra on top of that is putting like a solo into it, or a riff or something like that. So it can become sort of not difficult to do these things, but it can sort of cause a few issues with trying to put loads of notes in, for example. So your guitar solo or your riff could consider using the minor pentatonic scale that we had above, okay, or you could also use the actual minor scale, C minor scale, and them notes there obviously would work and hopefully work in any manner. So if we just quickly demonstrate that as well, we should find an instrument track, and there was a distorted guitar part. So if you go to your expand and your plugins and instrument and expand to, down to guitars, which is 21, and distorted lead, I think we've seen somewhere before. Dirty leads, so that could be interesting. See what that sounds like. And obviously, if we wanted to draw some notes in, if you get your draw tool, and where could we do the solo? Usually over the chorus section at the end. So if I just have a go at this chorus section here now, we know it's obviously not the chorus that we would be doing it on, but potentially bar 17, right? So I've got my note there, and let's just listen to the instrument first off. Okay, so yeah, that works. So it's some sort of guitar lead that'll do me. Got some effect on it as well. Right, okay, so usually within your guitar part, the most exciting thing to do in your solos is not start with the same chord that we've done elsewhere. And out of curiosity, I just want to double check the chord progression, because that's obviously beneficial as well. So this section here starts on an E flat, so what we could potentially do, is look at using G or a B flat, for example. So instead of it just using the root note of the chord that you're on, see if we can put it in there. So we might use some 16th notes as well, so worthwhile checking your grids on 16th notes there. And let's have a listen. And then I'll show you this as an idea, but again, you end up with it just being too much of a technical exercise, moving it down in the scale if you were going to do it this way. So you might want to vary some of the note patterns, so something like this. There we go. Okay, so it's not terrible, is it? But it's not the best. But we'll, a 10-second job. Let's see what we can generate for these last couple of beats. Background noises as well. So we're getting in a few more notes than I really wanted to, but here we go. And then we're going to resolve. So thinking about the resolve, 17, 18, 19, 20, I think we're going back to an E flat chord at this point here. So if I go G, that should work nicely, get into E flat. So let's see what this does. And then at this point here, we could land on the G like we did previously, so it's an octave lower. And then we could do a scale run again, starting on the E flat, and try off the beat, see if that makes it a little bit more interesting sounding. And then put the notes. Right, so there's your lead solo maybe. that note didn't work. Let's check what's chord we're on at that point. Change it into notes. Oops. Select that. Okay, sorry, so yeah, it's worthwhile checking the chord progression. Unfortunately, I haven't been doing it, but you get the point, right? So I'm on a B flat, sorry, at the end there. Okay, so it's gone E flat, F, A flat, B flat for that section. So let's just double check our guitar parts at this section. So in theory, that's E flat. That's going to be on a G, so it's actually a D, so that's a good starting note for a G. This is going to be A flat, so I'm actually halfway over using a C, which is the third, so that actually works quite effectively. But this is going to be a B flat chord, and I'm using a G, so it's not the best note. So let's go to try the F, and then the offbeat thing maybe wasn't the best option. So let me just try this instead quickly. I'm just trying to think. In a B flat, F, B flat, D might be a good option to go down a note, and then up a note in the scale, and then we could fill this in going up and down. So last note on the end there is E flat. Okay, so let's give it another shot one more time. Yeah, okay. So a few things that you'd go back into and change, but all in all, not terrible. Just had the E in there as well. That didn't help. So yeah. Right. Okay. So up to that point there, then hopefully you'll appreciate the importance of maybe getting the right notes in your scale. Otherwise, you get a few errors like I've just put in. Much nicer, much nicer. So I had an A natural in there. Obviously, that's going to clash with the chord that we're on and the scale that we're using, and I had an E in there. So that was just making sure that we use the right scale when we're going up the pattern there. And alternating, going backwards and forwards can also be an effective thing. So we've got a lot of descending scale patterns and a lot of alternating patterns in there. Some long held notes in there, maybe not too long, but some long held notes in there. And some notes skipping ideas as well, if you're interested in putting them in. So all in all, that's really the challenge that we're looking to do. The only other thing, like I say, that we could have put in there is maybe a unison riff, but we'll maybe look at that in the morning as another additionality. And if I was doing a unison riff, and once I got my pattern ready on my bass, on my guitar, whichever one I was going to do it on first, then in theory you could copy the part across. So if I did it on a bass part here, for example, you could duplicate it and then bring it onto your bass part, rename the part, so you're doing the same thing. Unless you wanted to do it in maybe thirds as well, so you could change the interval distances between them as well, so it's got a bit of harmony to it. But yeah, that's the challenge, to try and demonstrate or to try and create some sort of rock song. Obviously for the rock group, this is going to be ideal for you guys to use in your F&P. For the rappers and the hip hop people, just a challenge for you to be able to do that. And then obviously next week we'll look at your genre. Any questions, obviously, just get in touch. Cheers.